East, and so he's going to share a bit about what that work is that they're doing in the Synod, and which we actually are a part of as well, some of the work that they're doing. So thank you for being here with us, Joey.
Thank you so
Greatly
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. I'm going to do my best to stand right here for two reasons, because there's a mic and there's a screen right here. But I'm a wanderer, so my feet kind of want to come and walk around. So if I am moving outside of the frame here, then someone yell at me.
I don't know whether the speaker system is on.
Okay, is there? Thanks for letting us know. That's important. Perfect. How about now? Are you able to hear a little bit more clearly? Yeah. There we go. So this is what we're talking about. We've got to be able to hear. We have to be able to see. Thank you so much, JT, for the invitation. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for welcoming me this morning. Again, I'm Joey. I work with the Southwestern Washington Synod for the last 5 years, coming up on 5 years. And my role is called Director for Evangelical Mission, which is a sort of national title that means trying to do revitalization, vitality work with congregations, starting new projects, new ministries in this Synod in Southwestern Washington. A few years ago, we started this project, which is called Design for Peace, which I'll share a little bit more about. But basically, I want to do, I think, 2 or 3 things as best I can this morning. And that's to share a little bit about our approach to Design for Peace and what that is, and our North Star that guides us in that work, which we'll talk a little bit about. The second thing I want to share a sort of model that we use a lot in our work to think about change, how change happens. This is change work and how does it happen. And the third thing is to learn a bit from creation. And the reason I want to share a bit about that is that we're in the season of creation. And that means a lot to me. I grew up in Scotland. This is why I have this slightly dodgy intercontinental transatlantic accent. I've been in the States for about 15 years or so. But I grew up in Edinburgh in Episcopal Church, actually, and really shaped by the community in Iona, the Celtic spiritual community in Iona, and by an approach to Christian faith formation in my life that takes nature really seriously. We often talk about creation as a second book or second scripture, that when we look at creation, we learn about the Creator. So we're going to talk maybe a little bit about that today. So I feel honored to be in conversation with you in the season of creation. I think it's really relevant to the work that we're all doing. And actually, apropos of that, I'd like to start with a poem, if that's okay. And it's a poem that means a lot to me. It might be something that folks are familiar with. So this is a Wendell Berry poem. Any Wendell Berry fans in the house? All right, I had a hunch, I had a hunch there might be a few. And I'm thinking about this in the season of creation because this poem's about when things feel really hard, and things feel really challenging and heavy, and the place of creation in the midst of that for us. So I'm going to read this poem, and I wonder if a couple of you might share what comes up for you, or a reflection or a word, as a way for us to begin. So this is The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives might be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Is there a word that stands out to you, or a response anyone will be willing to share? How does this touch you or feel to you? Yeah, please.
It's interesting. I don't focus as much on my humanness in this poem, but the lines that we talk about in our family all the time are that do not tax their lives with a forethought of grief. And sometimes kind of jokingly too about our dog.
Yeah.
Who doesn't think about those things?
Dog's not worried about it.
But I do think about the wild animals and that aspect of it.
Thank you so much. I hope folks can hear okay, but yeah, that we recognize the difference perhaps between us and these wild animals, and one of the things that perhaps makes us uniquely human is our anxiety about the future. Yeah, another.
What stands out in this one for me is the third line.
Yeah.
The fear of what my life and my children's lives might be. Because I think in the whole climate change crisis, we're going to be minimally affected by that. Most of us are in the last decade or two or so of our lives, and we're not.
Perhaps all of us.
Well, some of you will have more time than that. But it's the future. It's the future. But I love the fact that little Mary knows where to go when that comes, when that feeling comes, and he knows how to get for himself peace and grace and freedom and rest. And that is in the things that are.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that line's very important. I'm a parent too, and in many ways the work that I do is propelled by my love for my kids and my solidarity with all of us as parents, as caregivers, as community members who are concerned about the next generation. Yeah, one more. Thank you.
I see the economy of, I'm in a house and I'm worried, but when I'm in nature, I'm at peace.
Yeah,
So that's what I see the home.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. In some ways, our civilization story is the opposite, right? You got to get inside. We got to get insulated from the dangers of the wild things out there. And then here's a poem saying perhaps we're at peace. Thank you. The reason I share this is I love this poem. I want to share it all the time, and it means a lot to me personally. And I think finding peace, finding grounding at a time that is so destabilizing and anxious for many of us is really important. But also I think teaches us something really important in this season of creation, which is that there's something to be learned. There's some wisdom to be learned in our reflection in creation. And perhaps that's about what it means to be human, what's different and the same, and how much are we part of creation, and we need to remember that, and how much do we have something different, and that comes with responsibility. So there's an essence, I think, in this poem that really feels relevant to this season of creation. So thanks for taking a moment to reflect with me about that. So I mentioned Design for Peace a moment ago. This is a project that we've built in the Synod to gather ecumenical congregations from around this area in discernment and design around how we use our spaces. That's really what Design for Peace is all about. And it came from a recognition that over and over again we're having conversations with churches asking big questions about the future. And ultimately those conversations kept coming back to, we have this big building. We have 5 acres. We have the open space. We have a parking lot we don't fully use. And again, conversations circling back to that sense that one of the core things that we are as a church is stewards of a place. And not only that, but put that in the context nationally of the fact that it is said that the churches, all of the churches put together in America, are the second biggest landowner after the federal government. That this is a generational opportunity for us as people of faith, of all kinds, to say, we are stewards of this place. What's it going to mean? How do we think about the future in a way that affects how we use our spaces? And so for many of us, it means, I was just saying to JT, like, tell me a bit about this space that, is it 15 years ago or so, or somewhere in that range, you built this space as a place to gather, a place for conversation, perhaps a place that community members can be, that's distinct or different from the sanctuary. And that's really common, and that's really wonderful. And there are many conversations that we're having with churches all around the region that are asking really big questions, dreaming big dreams about building affordable housing for seniors, about putting solar panels on all of these roofs, on community gardens and non-profit spaces. But what we learn over and over again, and the reason we've built this project, and I want to share a little bit about how we approach it, is that the first move in our brain often when we imagine these possibilities is a very highly technical approach. Okay, let's get all the lawyers in the room, let's get all the developers in the room, let's make a deal. And that's really valuable, right? That's valuable energy. And yet what we're doing in Design for Peace and in the Synod is trying to put our calling, our mission in the heart of this, and not just rushing ahead with a building, but saying, what does it mean for us to actually be a church in this space? How are we discerning what our vocation is? And so the first thing I want to share is this language of shalom, that if you've been around conversations with the Synod a lot, that we're using this language really regularly, and in Design for Peace, this is really the heart, and I said earlier, the North Star of what we're doing. And the way we describe shalom is really simple. This is from Randy Woodley, who some of you might have read. He's a Native American Cherokee Christian theologian. And he says, shalom is God's DNA, if you will. A biblical system of love and grace, of well-being and wholeness. Shalom is, this is important, shalom is God's original intention for all creation, living on earth in harmony together. And the reason we center this is this feels like the heart of the biblical story to me. But even more importantly than that, in our case, I find that when we have conversations about church vitality, and we're having these all the time in the ELCA, we often are asking the question, how do we get the church stronger and bigger and more sustainable? And then we're going to be able to take on some kind of mission. Does that resonate for anyone? Is that a conversation we often have? So we end up worrying about the stability and the size and the ongoing presence of our institutions or of our gatherings. And without shame, I want to argue that that's the wrong way around. That's putting the cart before the horse. That for us as people of faith, we're followers, we're disciples, and we're caught up in this dream. It's God's dream of shalom. And we need there to be stable gathering places that support our pursuing of that dream. We need there to be churches, we need there to be spaces in order to pursue that dream. So one of the ways we sometimes describe this is that it was a bishop in Latin America, I think, said, the church does not have a mission. God's mission has a church. And this is the mission of the Creator, says Randy Woodley, and this is what we put in the center. That God is doing something in the world at all times, bringing about shalom. And we are free to join in or not. And I really hope that we do join in, and that we don't only ask questions about our own stability, but we're excited about being caught up in this vision. And we, in some ways, we work backwards into church vitality from our being captivated by this vision of shalom. So that's a little bit about the guiding North Star in our work. I just want to pause there for a second before we move on. Does that feel resonant? Does that feel clear? Or is there anything that's coming up that's unclear, or a comment or a question that anyone would make? Not at the moment? Perfect. Okay, so there's a couple of models that we use really regularly, and this is familiar to a few folks who've been in our cohorts, gathering with other churches who are discerning around how to use their land. There's a couple of models we regularly use, and one of them is this image of the iceberg. This is a very triangular iceberg. I kind of want to have a more biologically accurate one. This is an iceberg. And we use this to describe thinking about how we move from the way the world is, the current reality, the top left, to the future that we envision. And for us, that's a future vision of shalom. Is this mic still going? I feel like it just dropped down. Did it? Did it go off?
A little bit.
Yeah. Is that? I don't know. I don't think I touched anything, but
Closer to it, you'll be fine.
is it still going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it on?
I think so. Okay, I'll just try and make sure I'm staying close enough to it. The reason we share this model is that the main pitfall that we fall into over and over again as leaders and as churches is we start with this current reality, the way things are in our church, the way things are in our community, the way things are in our globe. Like, you can think about any level of kind of change that you would dream about. And the sort of general instinct is to say, how do we jump over the top of this big thing that's in the way and get to this emerging future, the future that we prefer, the future we can envision? We kind of want to go from people are behaving a certain way, the world is a certain way. How do we just get people to behave differently? How do we just get the world to look different? And I would describe that as jumping over the top of this iceberg. We got a big barrier in the way, let's just demand different behavior. Let's just bring about a different reality. The reason we sit with this image really regularly in our cohort work with congregations about, okay, we have a building that is half used. How do we envision a world where it's fully used? So we can think about it at that scale, or we can say, how do we go from a world that is ravaged by climate change to a world of stable air and water and enough for everyone? You can think about it at any stage or any level. What this model encourages us to do is to recognize that the way the world is, the current reality we're in, is not an accident. It's not happenstance. It's not just the way things were required to be. The current reality we're in is built on a bunch of systems that have been established over time. So we can look at the visible behaviors arise from these systems and structures. And then at an even deeper level, we recognize that those systems and structures are built on a set of beliefs and narratives about the world. And we share this regularly because it feels really fundamental to effectively making change in our communities. Now, I like to throw my kids under the bus in examples like this because it's easy to do that and they don't mind. So if my kids are behaving a certain way and I want them to behave differently, I can say, behave differently. You better behave differently. I'm going to use my parental authority and just demand it. But do you think, is that change that lasts? I mean, I just need to continue enforcing and policing that behavioral change. But if I really want to see something, a different kind of change in my kids, I got to say, what are the systems? Oh, there you go. Whoa, I think we've got a loose wire here. Okay. Did I start yelling? Oh no. This is fun, isn't it? Here we go. Yeah. I think I stood on this wire. Is that it? Okay. I'm not going to stand on that wire again. Okay, so if my kids are behaving a certain way, I've got to ask myself as a responsible parent, what are the systems that are shaping the way my kids are behaving? So they're going to a school, they're going to a structure, and that's shaping their behavior, right? They're spending time with their friends, and their family systems of their friends are systems that are shaping them. They're watching TV that's made by TV producers and writers. That's a system and a structure that's shaping them. And then even deeper than that, I got to ask, well, what are the narratives? What are the stories and beliefs about what it means to be a child and what it means to grow up that are dominant in our system? The reason I share this, it might feel like abstract, I don't know. But the reason I share this is that we really want to envision change that lasts in our churches. And not only that, but as churches, as Christians in America, especially looking at climate change, especially looking at the way land is used, there are some really important systems and structures and some really important beliefs that we need to understand, and in fact we need to challenge if we want to use land differently and if we want to engage climate change differently. So I have a good friend named Sarah Augustine, who might be familiar to some folks here. She's a Christian theologian. She actually lives in the Pacific Northwest. She's a Tewa woman who has written a few books about climate change, and she wrote one recently called The Land is Not Empty. The reason she wrote that book with that title is that there is a belief and narrative, there's a whole system I know people in this room have learned about and studied and could teach me a lot about, called the doctrine of discovery. Right? The doctrine of discovery is a belief system, a way of seeing the world that has been claimed in order to justify systems of colonization of land in North America. And as a result of that, we see behaviors. We see the world as it appears around us. And she says in her book, we have to tell a different story. We have to understand these systems, we have to understand these narratives, and tell new narratives. So if the heart of the doctrine of discovery is, well, the land is empty, we can claim it, then she says, we have to tell a new story. The land is not empty. We can't erase indigenous communities. We need to restore and remember and repair those relationships. So, friends, the challenging thing here is that this is a decolonizing journey for us. As predominantly white Christians and predominantly white institutions, we are inheritors of a whole system and a set of beliefs that keep the land being used the way it's used, that keeps wealth in the hands of those who have wealth, and it's really hard for others to access that. And when we dream of shalom, when we have an emerging future, when we're in these conversations, we can't simply say, let's jump over the top of this iceberg. Let's dream of a new building. Let's hire an architect. We'll design it. Let's go. We instead need to take up, I think, a harder path, a deeper path that says, even the way our land is defined, and I'm talking about this land we're standing on right now. Whose land is this? How did the zoning of this land get decided? And these are the questions we get into in our land stewardship cohort. So we understand the way the land is used, in the land that we're stewarding is shaped by a set of stories, a set of systems. And if we want to envision a new way of using it, we have to take that journey. The other thing I'll point out here, because I'm a good Christian boy, is that this is water, right? This is an image of water. And is there not some theology, is there not some sacrament in our world where you go down beneath the water and something is changed and you emerge above the water in a new way? This is a baptismal journey, a collective baptismal journey, and it is a confessional one of repentance for us, and it's a transformational journey. So I want to share this. Yes, it's abstract in its big picture, and I think we could look at this and think about climate change globally, and we can say, I stood on this thing. There we go. I just stomped my feet. There we go. We got it. Okay. We can look at this globally and say, there is a current reality with a certain amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. That didn't come from nowhere. That comes from a bunch of systems that are built on a bunch of stories. And if we really want to engage and transform that conversation, then what are our stories that are better? What are our stories that we are in the heart of our scripture, in the heart of our spiritual tradition? This isn't on again, is it? Okay, I'm going to try and speak up as best I can. And then we're building, well, there we go. Thank you, Jesus. And then we're building, hallelujah. What's that?
Blame it on the Celtics.
Blame on the Celtics, okay, they're mischievous, aren't they? And then we're building new systems and new structures, maybe literally in our lab. Maybe we build buildings that are emerging from our alternative stories of shalom, that compete with or that resist the dominant stories that make the world the way it is. So, maybe this is abstract, maybe this is big picture, but this is the approach to change that we use, we put in the heart of the work of Design for Peace. We're not just about rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, as they say. We really want transformational change. So how does this all come home for us in our churches? Well, I've sort of named it ourselves, is that for us as members, leaders in these churches, and I'm a layperson, I'm a member of Peace, Lutheran in the Hilltop, and in my church, I want to be part of the stewarding of land, the use of land, and we have a modest affordable housing ministry and are in the work of figuring out how to potentially scale that. But all of this, I think, comes home from this sort of global level. It comes home to us in our stewardship of our places, that you all are stewards of this place. You all are stewards of this place. And I would argue, I would encourage you to see yourselves as people who are caught up in a vision of shalom with the Creator, with responsibility for the land, the buildings, the space here. And there's an opportunity to take this baptismal journey, to continue taking this baptismal journey into a new future where you may have new uses of this space, but let it emerge from resistance to the doctrine of discovery, let it emerge from resistance to those stories and from a new story that we're telling. So I want to move on to one other core model we use and then have enough time for conversation. But is there something burning in the room right now that needs to be said, a comment or a question about this? Yeah, please.
In that bottom part of the iceberg, where it's beliefs and narratives, are the changes there rational or emotional?
I love that question. That's really good. I won't give you another model because we've got death by models sometimes in these cases, but sometimes we talk about the need to recover a fully integrated way of being human. And the language in the Hebrew Bible is nephesh. It's the ensouled, the fully ensouled one. And you see this in Genesis, that the person who is made is nephesh. And in the rabbinical tradition, that means mind, body, spirit, and community. And I think in the modern world, we generally think a person is kind of a brain on a stick, right? We're hyper-rational. We make rational decisions, you know? But I know because I work in the church, people are extremely irrational. People operate on their gut. And in fact, I think that we really built this approach to the questions of discerning how to use land, because over and over again we've seen congregations say, you gather a small group of people, we study this issue, we put together a technical team, and then we're going to have a vote, and it's the first time anyone's seen this, and we're going to have architectural drawings for this new project. And what are people responding out of? They're responding out of their gut. They go, I got married in that church you just demolished. My kids used to play in that education wing that you just asked someone to reimagine, you know? So we respond from our gut. So I think, I take your point, really, really important. I do think that narratives often, you know, narratives by their nature are spoken often, right, are intellectual in a way, but they're also lived out, right? I live the story that I love my kids. I don't just say I love my kids. So I love that you're calling us to a deeper way of being more fully human in that, yeah. Sometimes we say a story, but we live the opposite one, right? Yeah, thank you. Other comments or feedback or questions about this particular image? Beautiful. Okay, I want to talk just for a few more minutes about one other approach, one other model we often use when we're, again, accompanying congregations like yours in thinking about renewing, reimagining the way they're using spaces. And it's actually explicitly a creation-based approach. So I really like this idea called biomimetics, or biomimicry, which is imitating nature. And I said this a minute ago. This was, I think, part of my formation in Scotland, was like, you want to learn about God? Go look at creation. If you want to learn about how human relationships can function, look at how the microbes in the soil function. And there's something to be learned from the creation about the Creator, and also about us as human members of the creation. And so we use this image, again, sort of may look abstract, but I want to talk about it just for a few minutes, to describe how change happens in these systems. And we use this a lot with congregations that are undergoing sort of imagining new things, because the biggest challenge to something new is our attachment to something old. Our biggest challenge to something new is our attachment to something old. And that attachment might be a gut level, you know, my kids played in that room, we are not painting it a different color, we are not demolishing it, that's for sure, right? And yet, everything that is renewed involves some releasing of something old. And so the question that this model helps us think about is like, how, in human communities, how do we actually start to let go of things that might be really important to us? And this might be a really personal level, that like I can't grow in a particular way until I release some part of my own story, or it might happen collectively. But the reason why I say this is learning from creation is that the best example of this is really a Northwest creation example, which is the nurse log, the image of a nurse log. So for those who don't know, I'm assuming that we're all good Northwesterners and we like to take a hike in the woods around here. And a nurse log is, you know, when a great big tree that was standing in the forest has fallen. And you see the log only, maybe it's on its side, or maybe it's just a standing stump still. And you can get a sense for the size of what this tree was. But the way that it is breaking down, the way that it's biodegrading, is feeding all kinds of new life. There's a new tree or several trees bursting out of this old stump. And I've got lots of pictures of nurse logs on my phone, because they really speak to me, and they're really beautiful. But the way to look at this model with that image in mind is to say this green line, this top, you imagine the life cycle of a big tree in the forest here. So at one point it was on the left here, it was just emerging, it was just a sapling, and it grew really big and it became really established and really strong. And that was a stable kind of period. And then, because trees do get bigger and they do get heavier, and then the wind comes and the storm comes and the roots might get a little less strong, that some things start to crack, or some decline, we might call it in the church, begins to happen. But what we're invited to see when we think about this as a creation story is that this is natural. This is the life cycle of living things. The tree got really big, it was really stable for a while, and then it could not sustain. And so it begins to fall, or perhaps in a storm it falls all in one go. I'm going to pause here because I think it's really important to note that we don't internally, going back to systems and stories, I believe, when I work with a lot of churches, I believe that we've internalized a really different story for churches. And that story is, we get started, just like a tree, we were a sapling, we get established, and then we go, and we go, and we go and go forever, and if we don't, then we failed. We got to keep going forever. We need to be sustainable, we need to keep... Now, that is the story of the machine. That's an industrial story. And it's one that, if things going down is failure, then we have a huge problem, I think. And I relate this at the more macro level to the idea of GDP. Like, if the GDP is not growing, then we're in a recession, we're in a crisis. I mean, our biosphere simply cannot sustain constant growth. So it's really, really important that we find another story, not a story that you have failed if things get smaller. So when we look at creation, we see that just like a tree grows, it's stable, and then it begins to decline, it begins to fall. This is part of being a tree. We don't say that's a failed tree. But something else is happening at the same time in the forest, which is that all around the tree, even during its life, there are all kinds of other seeds in the soil. And I think about this as the parable of the sower. You know, Jesus says the seed's already there. The seed is all around, but is the soil there for this seed to emerge? So I really do believe that in our forest, in our community, there's seeds everywhere. And when these great big trees fall and they compost, then they feed the emergence of all kinds of new things. And those new things look different, and they're shaped different. But it is the decline, it is the hospicing, the composting of the one that feeds the other. So friends, what I want to claim is that this is a natural system and that it's true in the church. And not just in the church, but in every human community, because we're creation too. Now, it might be scary, because I'm not actually standing here saying the whole church has to decline all in one go. What I'm saying is two things. One is, can we recover a story, actually a really faithful story? And I think this is a resurrection story. This is another sacramental story. Can we recover a story that gives us the permission to let things go and put things down without feeling like we're failing? Are there things in our churches that we could let go, that we could put down, that we're afraid to because maybe we feel that it will reflect on us? So that's the first. And the second is, can we do that in pieces? Like, this isn't about the church going away overnight. Actually, I think there's lots of things that are emerging in the church. There are many, many beautiful things emerging. I'd love to hear what's emerging here. And there are pieces that can be put down. It doesn't have to happen all in one go. So we've got a few minutes before I want to close here. The question I want to invite you to reflect on, I wonder if you just take a moment with someone next to you, so we have a chance to talk to each other, and then I'll hear from a few of you. But the question I want to ask is, when you look at your stewardship, when you look at this place, your community here at Agnus Dei, do you see some things that we could put down faithfully? We don't have to name them. You could say, well, I see some things and here's what they feel like, or perhaps you'd like to describe them. And the other question at the same time is, do you see some things emerging? Do you see seedlings emerging that are exciting, that are connected to the vision of Shalom? And maybe they look really different than the tree when it was at its height, but they're seedlings. So I want to invite you to turn to someone else. Is there something that you feel we could faithfully set down? And is there something you see that's emerging? Is that okay? You take just a few minutes, and then I'll hear from you, and we'll wrap up. Thanks. All right, friends, let's take one more minute and then we'll come back together. All right, friends, let's come back together as a group. Well, friends, we've got just a couple of minutes before I promised we wouldn't go over 11:30. I want us to make one comment and then invite just a couple of folks to share something that may have come up. The comment is this: what we're doing in this room, these conversations, is discernment. When we say what might we be able to put down, what might be being called to put down, and what is emerging, that's discernment. That's our collective discernment work. And when we do that with this vision of shalom, that's when we get into moments where we say, oh, we could design something based on what's emerging. And that's the core of this work. And I think doing it in this room is really special and really exciting. I also wonder, who else are we discerning with? Do you have to be a member of this church to be part of the discernment around this space? Who else are we thinking and imagining with? So thank you for turning to each other and having a moment of discernment together. I wonder if we could hear 2 or 3 people. What came up in your conversation?
Oh, sure, what you said, but
Please, yeah.
I made the comment that I appreciated the hospice workers because change is hard for people. And that part of making the change is to realize the loss that some people feel about something changing in the church.
Such important work.
Because I think for people that like change, like I'm just like, let's just do it. And why would I wait? Well, those people will catch on. They'll come back. And that was a good reminder for me that the hospice workers, maybe, as Kathy said, turn into the midwives.
I love that.
That both those functions are very important.
They're people who accompany transitions, life
But
transitions.
she also said, I thought it was really a great example was that some of you don't even remember this, but back in the day, the plan was that when we did this building, that we would at one point have a new sanctuary space over on that hill. And that was the dream 20 years ago, that we would do that. And somehow or rather, the stabilizers and the hospice workers sort of entered the picture, and it was a kind of a devolutionary process that thankfully, I think, that's not something that we even have thought about for probably, I would say, 10 years.
That's a great example, thank you. Yeah, there are things that are previous versions of the future. We can get attached to those, right? And there's been some releasing in that. That's a really good example. Thank you. Yeah, please.
Well, our table discussed the same thing, and we realized it was probably economics that made us decide that was not a good idea, and struggling through COVID only made that more evident. But we have discussed what could we do? Because it's a hill full of what I call woodchucker, the dirt that came out from under this building, so it's not exactly prime garden. Someone said, let's flatten it and build a garden. It's like, well, let's take that crummy dirt away and see what's under there. Maybe we could build a garden, but that stuff's not, you even can see the grass that grows on it doesn't look too happy compared to others, so you know it's striving. But it's still there, and it's still available to us. And we have had thoughts about it, but we haven't acted on it.
Beautiful. I'm sometimes accused of being overly metaphorical, but I can't help but see that when you look at the grass and you can read what's going on there based on the color of the grass and how, well, that's what we're doing in our communities as well. We're saying, let's look at what's thriving really well. That tells us something about what's going on here. Let's look at where some people are struggling, and that tells us what's in the soil. That comes back to this kind of image. So thank you for living that. Yeah. There you go. So here we are, we're moving into imagination, right? So that's beautiful. All right, yes, Phil, one more time.
My only thought was that arrow on the emergent system should be pixelated and out of focus, because we really don't know where
I
it's
like
going.
that, yeah, I like that a lot. How about the table in the back here? Any particular comment you'd be willing to share? How was your conversation? All right, we'll come back to it. How about that? Yes, please. Yeah.
I was not part of the kind of whole conversation here, but you talk about metaphorical.
Yeah.
I was thinking about a member of our congregation who a number of years ago passed away, and it was her vision as she was declining that her body would, be decomposed, which they can do now. Yeah. And that soil would be used to put underground here to plant a tree.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So, that sense of re-emerging,
Absolutely.
from somebody's care and
Love
concern.
Love that. Thank you for that example. Yeah. All right, friends, we've reached our time here. This isn't the end of our conversation. We have, a team of you who are participating in this journey with other congregations, discerning, designing around the vision of Shalom. And so if you want to continue this conversation, please talk to those folks. Perhaps Pastor JT can help you connect. I also would love to continue this conversation myself with you in any way that's helpful. Can I end with a blessing for you? Okay. Thank you. Let's pray. Spirit, you're blowing across the land, and we're breathing with you. And you're blowing and filling sails and filling our lungs with energy for your vision of peace, your vision of shalom, that you're always bringing about everywhere. And let us feel the presence of your Spirit here in this church, in this space, and in this community, and in all of our relationships. And let us have the courage to release and put things down when it's their time. And let us have the imagination and the energy to nurture the things that are emerging. Spirit, give us both of these things as we envision a future of our church and of our community. Amen. Amen. Thanks, friends. Nice to see you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. As Joey said, we are a part of the Design for Peace Faith Stewardship. I'm not going to call it Joey. Go ahead. And so we are currently in process with other churches. Myself, Phil, Linda Zinder, and George Underwood. And we're your Faithland Initiative team, who have been, over the past month or so, spending time in conversation with members of the congregation, but also community members and other organizations, discerning how they see the needs are, what the needs are within this Gig Harbor community and the peninsula itself, and how those needs that they see, how we might be able to align our land to help meet those needs. So it's been an interesting process thus far. We're going to continue to do that and have conversations. Definitely, we're not in the space of design. We're in the space of discernment and understanding how others see the needs of not just our space, but our broader community, and how we can have a greater impact by utilizing the land that we do steward in a way in which can benefit the larger community around us. So it's been a great process thus far. Thank you.
JT. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Taking your needs around. I don't know if I was supposed to be in a little.
We've been in the process of trying to
Seems like a great sound.
getting some guys to accommodate this thing. The technology is a little bit old, but it does work well.
Yeah, it's great.
When it works.
Yeah.
So it's not only trees that fall in the forest.
Yeah.
Trees that fall in the fence.
It's good to know. We have to be cautious of this.
There's something loose in
I think
there.
it's
Yeah.
cedar. Cedar.
I love that.
Here's an old farm stuff.
That's amazing.